Hello guys, and now we are on the 15th game of Gary Kasparov's masterpieces, and here the white player is Gary Kasparov, and the black player is none other than our own Vishy Anand, and this was played in 1995 in September, New York City, USA. This was the World Championship match in round 10, and the opening was Spanish game open variation. The lesson from this game is that the huge accumulation of chess data has revolutionized the study of opening strategy. Before you could study all of the known examples of a particular opening variation. Now even a small part of an opening beginning after the 10th move may have thousands of examples. When you study an opening, you have to concentrate on the most popular lines and the ones that involve the most complicated position. You might start with the strategies that are most often recommended for your opponent, consulting up-to-date books. It is necessary to deeply examine all complicated positions, especially those that involve sacrifices. In variation described as sharp, a single mistake can prove fatal, and the better prepared player will win. And now, in this game, Kasparov won the battle of opening theory. This game was so influential that many players abandoned this particular line of Spanish game as black. Though in the years since then computers have found additional resources and the debate still continues. Okay, it's a Spanish game e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6 and bishop b4, knight f6, castles, knight takes c4. This is the open variation of the Spanish, and it leads to very sharp play with both sides mobilizing their armies quickly. Black has an extra pawn, but trying to hang on it will result in severe problems on the d file. Black has to return the pawn and get castled. d4, white offers another pawn to tempt black into opening the e file, and after b5, bishop b3. Now the bishop, white threatens to move the bishop to d5. After d5, and d takes e5, white regains the pawn. Uh, Now black can use the c5 square for the bishop or knight, uh, and has nothing to fear on the e file. Bishop e6. Now knight bd2, and uh, now knight bd2 also can be played, and c3 can also be played. c3 is the main line, and after knight c5, c3, d4. This is the most aggressive and also the riskiest line. Instead, after bishop g4, intending to retreat the knight to e6, black has a decent play. Knight g5. Uh, this introduces a piece sacrifice that leads to unclear complications if accepted. Anand had prepared an alternative line, d takes c3. So at that time, this game was considered fatal for black's opening strategy, but improvements were eventually found for black. Uh, Kasparov worked out the entire variation at home. It would be interesting to know what he had in mind. Uh, uh, Now, uh, if at all queen takes g5 is played, queen takes g5 is queen takes g5 is considered dangerous because after queen f3, then bishop d7, bishop d7. If long castles, Then bishop takes e6, f takes e6, queen takes c6, queen takes e5, and b4 gives white a strong attack. So here instead of long castle, bishop d7 is played, and after bishop takes f7 check, and king e7, and bishop d5, and knight takes e5, uh, queen e2, and d3, queen e1. Black is in trouble on the e file, and it is easier for white to complete development. So the knight sacrifice is not accepted. Now Anand goes for d takes c3, and Kasparov exchanges the knight to cause damage to king side pawn barrier. After knight takes c6, f takes c6, b takes c3, queen d3, and Anand should have captured the bishop at b3. He soon regrets the decision. 13th, if at all knight takes b3 is played, after a takes b3, queen d3, and here black might be able to reposition the knight at d5 or f5. Black so after this, Anand plays queen d3, and there was bishop c2, and this bishop c2 was Michael Thal's idea to set up a magnificent rook sacrifice. And after queen takes c3, Anand followed his own preparation here, and after knight b3, this seemed to catch Anand by surprise. Kasparov sacrifices the rook at a1 for a fierce attack. And after knight takes b3, and bishop takes b3, and now Anand plays knight d4. He differs from the acceptance of the sacrifice until the next move. Queen, if at all queen plays, queen takes a1, and then there will be queen h5 check, and after g6, queen f3, and the queen attacks the h1 a8 diagonal, and she also keeps the black king from fleeing to the king side. After knight d8, queen ef6, rook g8, and bishop takes e6, bishop e7, bishop d7 check, king takes d7, e6 check, and after knight takes e6, queen takes a1, and bishop that's all. Queen takes a1, and bishop d6, queen c3, rook gf8, rook d1, a5, and this variation was eventually drawn in a 2001 computer game, and so Anand didn't take the rook, and after knight d4, queen g4, queen takes a1, bishop takes e6. The white battery of bishop and queen on c8 and h3 diagonal cuts off the escape route to the queen side, rook d8. And at this point there doesn't seem to be any way for Anand to save the game. Bishop h6. Kasparov is down a rook, but he offers up the bishop at h6. Black can't capture the bishop with the pawn because the pawn is needed to block the check at h5. Otherwise, it will be followed by the checkmate at f7, and queen c3. If at all, queen takes f1, king takes f1, then g takes h6, queen h5 check, king e7, and there is queen f7 mate. So this cannot be played. Here after queen c3 by Anand, there is bishop takes g7, and this is a brilliant move that is shown on the analysis. And after queen d3, bishop takes h8. After bishop takes h8, there is queen g6, and bishop f6, and bishop e7. Trading queens doesn't solve the problem here, because after queen takes g4, and after bishop takes g4, rook d5, there is f4, and the central pawns just march up the board. So trading queens doesn't solve any problem here. And after bishop e7, bishop takes e7, queen, bishop f6, bishop e7, and now, because now if at all king takes e7, then there is queen h4 check. So it was the queen trade was forced. So after queen takes g4, bishop takes g4, king takes e7, rook c1, and after c6, Kasparov is out of his opening preparation, but he finishes the game with efficiency. And after this, f4, a5, king f2, a4, king e3, b4, bishop d1. The bishop gets out of the way so that the g pawn can advance. a3, g4, and then after g4, rook d5, rook c4, c5, king e4, rook d8, rook takes c5, and then knight e6, rook d5, rook c8, f5, rook c4 check, king e3, knight c5, g5, rook c1, rook d6, and here Anand resigned. There is no way to stop the white pawns. Okay guys, I hope you would have enjoyed the game, and this was a very illustrative game. I'll meet you in the next game between Kasparov and Topalov, which was played in 1909. It was a Pirc opening, Pirc defense. I'll meet you in the next game guys. Thank you all.